Dividing decimals by decimals is what we're going to look at in this video. So students will understand how to divide a decimal by another decimal. So the first thing that we need to remember is that you cannot divide by a decimal. So you need to move the decimal until you have a whole number. So you can only divide by a whole number. So if we're going to try and divide by a decimal, we have to make the number a whole number. And then we also need to remember to bring the decimal straight up after we have moved it. One other thing I should make sure that I emphasize is if I move one decimal, I have to move the other decimal. So it's just like a one-step equation. What you do to one side, you have to do the other side. Now with a decimal, if I move a decimal, I have to move the other decimal just as many places. So let's look at an example. 45 6/10 divided by 3 2/10. So if I do an estimate of this, if I look at the 45 6/10, I'm going to say that that's going to go close to 45. Now you might say, well, it has a 6, so shouldn't I round it up? Yes, but if I look at the 3 2/10, I'm going to round that to 3. And I know 3 will not go into 46 because 4 plus 6 is 10. But I do know that 4 plus 5 is 9, so 45 is divisible by 3. And if I divide 45 by 3, that's going to give me 15. So I know my estimate is going to be somewhere around 15. So my answer should be around 15. So now I'm going to write out my 45 6/10, and that's going to go inside, and the 3 2/10 is going to go on the outside. Now I can't bring my decimal straight up because I have a decimal on the outside, so I need to make sure I move that first. And remember, what I do to the inside, I must do to the what I do to the outside, I must do to the inside. So I'm going to move that decimal, and that's going to be where my new decimal place value is. So I'm going to bring that straight up from there. So this is where my decimal is going to be located in my answer. So now I'm going to look at this 3 2/10 as 32. So 32 can't go into 4. It can go into 45 one time, and then that's going to give me 32. And I'm going to subtract those, and that's going to give me 13. Then I want to make sure I bring the 6 down. So I'm going to draw my arrow, bring the 6 down. So now I have to figure out how many times do I think 32 can go into 136. Well, if I look at my estimate of 15, I could say 5. So if I try 5, that's going to be too much. So let's try 4. And that's going to give me 128. And I'm going to subtract these. So when I subtract that, I come up with 8. Well, that doesn't bring me to 0, so I'm going to add a 0 to the 6. Remember, the 0 doesn't make it larger or smaller. It just gives us another number to work with. So I'm going to bring that down. So now 32 can go into 80 2 times, which is going to give me 64. And then I'm going to subtract those. And that's going to give me 16. So again, I'm not at 0, so I'm going to add a 0. I'm going to bring that down. And 32 can go into 165 times. And that makes 160 exactly. So if I subtract those, it gives me 0, leaving me with an answer of 14 25/100. Which is close to my estimate of 15. Alright, let's look at another example. 5 375,000 divided by 1 25/100. So if I round my 5 375,000, I would round that to 5, and I'd round my 1 25/100 to 1. So if I divide those, that's going to give me 5. So my answer should be around 5. So let's write 5 375,000 inside divided by 1 and 25/100ths on the outside. So if you remember, if I'm dividing by a decimal, so if I have a decimal on the outside, I have to move my decimal to make a whole number. So if I move my decimal twice on the outside, I have to move my decimal twice on the inside. So therefore, bringing my new decimal place to between the 7 and the 5. 125 can go into 537 4 times, and then that's going to give me 500. And I'm going to subtract those, and that's going to give me 37, and I want to draw my arrow to bring the 5 down, so I have 375. Alright, 125 goes into 375 3 times, and that's going to make 375. So if I subtract those, that's going to give me 0, leaving me with the answer of 4 3/10. If you have any questions about dividing decimals, I would suggest going back and watching any part of this video. What are 2 things that you need to take away from watching this video? I hope you said to move the decimal and make it a whole number on the outside, and to move the decimal on the inside the same number of times that you move the decimal on the outside. Thanks for watching.